I, 35 male, used to be married to my high school sweetheart, Kelly, 35 female. We got married after undergrad, and overall, I would say that we were really happy. The biggest conflict that I would say we had was the topic of children. Not the idea of actually having them, but when. I've always wanted to be a dad, and wanted to have my kids while I was still young enough to run around with them while they were kids, and have a good adult relationship with them once they got older. Kelly brought up a lot of good points about needing to get married, living fully on our own, and being out of debt first. For about 5 years, I worked a job I had no passion for, solely because of the large paycheck, and I was able to nearly wipe out our debt completely. We didn't have a lot to begin with in the first place. Then Kelly said she wanted a house, so we got one. Then a few months in, she talked about wanting to go to grad school. Even though we often fought about children, in the end, I always supported her choices because I didn't want her to resent me. I would often ask Kelly if she had ever changed her mind about wanting kids, but she assured me that she still did, just not now. I asked when would she be, and it always felt like she kept moving the goalpost whenever she'd list her requirements, and that I was painted as a jerk for pressuring her for kids. Unfortunately, after weeks of not feeling well, Kelly was diagnosed with an illness. It was rough, but I stood by her and she pulled through, but the cost was her fertility. I felt like a jerk again because part of me resented Kelly for not agreeing to have kids sooner, and that resentment grew when Kelly refused to look into using a surrogate, insisting that either we were both the bio parents or neither of us were. In the end, I couldn't take it and just divorced her. A lot of people called me selfish, sexist, misogynistic, etc. But I just wasn't sure if this was something that I would be able to truly let go of. I let Kelly keep the house and moved out of town. Eventually, I met and fell in love with Angela, 32 female, and after shortly moving in together, she got pregnant, so we got married. She's entering her 3rd trimester with our baby girl, and I'm so excited. A friend back in college moved back to the States and wanted to have a small party to see everyone. He invited Kelly and me, so I checked in with him privately and asked if it would be okay to bring my wife, and he said that it was cool, so I did. This was the first time I saw Kelly in person for years, and she looked well enough. I was polite, but kept my distance, and thought everything was good, until the next day, when I got a barrage of texts and DMs blasting me for having the audacity to parade my heavily pregnant younger, wife in front of my infertile ex-wife. I had no malicious intentions, and it has been a few years, plus I asked beforehand, just to double check. So, am I the a-hole? Edited to add. Talked about this with someone in the comments. Kelly said it would be too upsetting at the idea of me having a child with another woman, regardless of how the child was conceived. It was either adopt or nothing at all. I honestly felt like there was no way we could progress in the relationship without one of us resenting the other, so I filed. If she truly didn't want kids, she put on a great performance. Before her illness, she would constantly gush over other people's babies, insisted on buying a house in a good school district for our future kids, and even talked in extensive detail about wanting to be a stay-at-home for up to 6 years. I think Kelly just assumed we'd always have time, and then life threw a curveball. If Kelly had stated that she would have been open to having children sooner, under the condition that I be the primary caretaker, I would have done it. I would have even taken a lesser-paying job so I could have the free time to do it. I never wanted to put her in a position where she felt like she would have to give up her career entirely. Edited to add 2. Stepped away for a little bit, but I just wanted to be clear about something. I did not leave Kelly while she was still sick. It was a year after she was healthy again, and we had been in therapy for months. Not the a-hole. You divorced. It doesn't sound like you screwed her over in it, and you each have your own lives now. She should have known having kids was important to you since that was obviously a wedge issue in your relationship with her. So she shouldn't have been shocked that you went on to achieve that goal. Also, 32 is essentially the same age as 35. It's not like you showed up with a pregnant 20-year-old. Not the a-hole. It's been years since you're split. You were not parading Angela in front of Kelly. This sounds to be a case of people getting offended on behalf of someone else. Not the a-hole. You were invited, and it's normal for someone's spouse to accompany them. Plus, you checked with the host in advance. I don't think you are an a-hole for getting divorced. Differences in expectations around having children is a pretty common reason. You haven't seen your ex in years. Life goes on. Nobody should be surprised that you married again and are having a baby. Background info. It was my 32 female dad's 70th birthday last week. For it, my parents decided to rent out some cabins and invite me and my siblings and our families. My dad is Scottish, so the cabins he rented were up in the Cairngorms. We all live fairly far apart. My boyfriend and I live in London. One of my brothers and his family, and my sister and her family live in Edinburgh. And my other older brother and his wife live in Florida. They are both English, though. The way the trip worked out, my brother that lives in the USA was in Edinburgh for work the week before, so he decided to just make his way up from there. My brother's wife, I'll call her Kelly, flew over to London last Thursday night and asked if she could grab a ride up with me. We set off at 6 a.m. last Friday to try to beat some of the London traffic and get out of the city before it gets too mad. It's about a 10-hour drive. Immediately, she was complaining. Firstly, it was because London was too polluted. Then it was because my car is too small. Then it was because there were no coffee places we could easily stop at. Then there were too many cars on the road. It was unending. We eventually got north of the city and onto the motorway, and she asked me if we can take a more scenic route to see the countryside. I said sure. I grew up in Yorkshire, so suggested we bomb it straight up there, and then spend a few hours over lunch looking around the Dales, National Park in Yorkshire, grab some food, and then get back on the road. She agrees. We get up to Yorkshire. She slept almost the entire way, and I take us out into the countryside, and again, the complaints. We're on this little single-track road up to a pub, and there's a tractor coming the other way, so I have to reverse us into a passing place, and the whole time she was like, "This is so dangerous. Why can't they turn this into a real road?" I mean, just insane complaints. We make it to lunch, and again, it's not good enough for her. She hates the food. She hates that you have to order at the bar. She hates that it's too dark inside. She hates literally everything. We get back into the car, and I'm looking forward to her falling asleep and shutting up. I get us back onto the motorway, and she says to me, "Seriously, I wish I could hire a car and drive us. I'd have found a nicer place to eat, and I wouldn't have taken us down a road like that." I'm at the absolute end of my tether at this point, so I just turn off the motorway, head into town, find a rent-a-car place, and tell her if she wants to drive herself so badly, she can. Understandably, she was upset, called my brother crying that I'd abandoned her in the middle of nowhere, in the center of one of the largest towns in Cumbria, and he wound up buying her a train ticket and driving down himself to pick her up from Glasgow. My family is very annoyed at me, and I admit it wasn't the nicest thing to do, but I'm not going to apologize to her when I offered her a lift, and she was rude and insulting the entire way. Am I the a-hole? Edit. Apparently this is unclear. Kelly is not American. They live in the USA, but both my brother and his wife are from this country. There was no abandoning a foreigner happening here. Not the a-hole. I'd probably have left her in London with that many complaints. Your brother knows how his wife is, and your family will learn if they don't already know. They'll figure it out, and maybe she'll get left again by someone else. So she wanted to see the countryside, then complained you were on country roads and went to what sounds like a typical country pub, complaining not just about the situation, but about you, your decisions. I'd have found us a nicer place for lunch and not taken us down a road like that. Is just rude in a way any adult should realize is rude, without having to be told. She sounds insufferable, and sounds like the stereotype of an arrogant American. Not the a-hole. If I'm doing somebody a favor, and they complain the whole time, just to top it off, and say, I should have just hired a driver because I don't like the roads or food places you were choosing, I'd kick them out of my car as well. A little insight. I, 17 female, lost my mom this year, early April. My parents divorced when I was really young, but I've kept in touch over the years with my dad to ask for financial help with schools, trips, etc. Other than that, he told both my mom and I not to keep in touch unless necessary. Ever since my mom's passing, I've been living with my dad. I don't know the details, but my mom and dad never had a friendly relationship, and I can tell my dad really didn't like her, but to me, she was my single working mom, and I really miss her. My dad's new wife, my stepmom, is okay, but she acts a bit tense around me and tries too hard. I don't think she likes my mom either, since she tells me to stop when I talk about her. I feel like my dad is pushing for us to get close, but I don't see that happening, since I barely know either of them well enough. Plus, I'll always only have one mom. Here's where the problem starts. Back when I used to live with my mom, she used to work tons of shifts, get barely any rest, and work her damn hardest for me. I wanted to surprise her with a surprise vacation or a small trip for her to relax, but we couldn't afford it. So I started asking my dad for money every few weeks, saying I needed it for extracurricular courses. When I finally had enough, my mom passed away, and I started living with my dad and stepwife. I still had the trip money left over, so I called in my aunt, mom's sister, to come with me for the trip. I don't know how, but my dad found out about the money I've collected and got really angry, but said he'd forgive me if I went on the trip with stepmom. Obviously, I didn't, and left with my aunt when she was away at work. My aunt and I had a blast on our small road trip, stayed at a motel, and basically just toured around in big wide open spaces. As a city child, I had a lot of fun in the countryside. When I came back, Dad was really mad and took away all my devices and grounded me, calling me an a-hole for not choosing to go with stepmom and using his money like a thief. I know what I did with lying about my courses and taking his money was wrong, but was it wrong of me to go with my aunt? She really reminds me of my mom, and I miss her so much. My dad, his wife, and extended family found out and are all calling me a petty thief and a liar. My stepmom has started ignoring me in the house too, and everyone keeps telling me to apologize. But I don't see where I did wrong with going with my aunt, who I feel closer to. Not the a-hole. While the way you went about getting the money to finance the trip was not exactly kosher, you had every right to decide who to take with you. You chose to take someone you know and love, someone who is a close connection to your mother. The fact that you aren't close with your father, stepmother, is their own fault. He was the one who chose to only support you financially and not emotionally, so he has only himself to blame. Is there a way for you to get out of their house? Could you live with your aunt? They're emotionally aggressive and isolating you because you didn't cower to their demands, and that is not okay. It could get worse. Everyone sucks here. Your dad sounds a little bit authoritarian, so good luck. But you shouldn't have lied about the reason why you need the money, and his reasoning probably is that he gave you the money for a specific reason, and he can determine what that reason is now since you lied about it. He could have even told you to give the money back. Everyone sucks here. Yeah, your dad sucks for trying to force a relationship with you and your stepmother. You suck for lying to him. You could have done chores and get the money and not need to lie to him and act like a thief. He gave you the money for one thing, not the other. Next time, try doing chores. Update. Although my previous post was judged and the final verdict given was not the a-hole, I recognize my mistake and have since apologized to both dad and stepmom. Right now, I'm working on paying them back through chores and helping around the house, and I'm getting there slowly. The total amount I took from my dad was $150, by the way. I got the money through lying because our city was in lockdown at the time, and I couldn't get any jobs even if I wanted to. Plus, allowance was out of the question. Regarding child support, I don't know if my dad was paying it or not since my mom told me not to talk about financial issues and stuff. Probably not to worry me. But I do know we didn't exactly live the high life. There was barely much to eat, and my mom worked multiple jobs. We lived paycheck to paycheck. My dad is much better off financially. Stepmom has finally stopped ignoring me, but doesn't make much convo. I've tried asking my dad why his relationship with my mom was so bad, and he said they had a forced marriage and not to talk about her, since it would upset stepmom and that she's currently pregnant. To be honest, I'm just really tired and miss my mom. My 15 female, parents divorced when I was 6. They remained amicable, and both of them got married when I was 9. My stepdad is a sweet guy, pretty rough on the outside, but a total cinnamon roll on the inside. He has an older son, 17 male, that I see as my big brother, and my stepsister, 15. My dad, on the other hand, married a not-so-kind woman with 3 daughters, 23, 18, and 13, that I barely know. I live primarily with my mom since I like the family environment way more. I love my dad, but to be honest, being in his house is awful. He spends a lot of time with his stepdaughter, 13, and I'm okay with that. But when it's my time with him, she's always around, and he forces her presence in every activity I want to do with him. Movies, she's to come. Fishing, she's to come. Camping, she's to come. They make me feel like the third wheel in my own time with my father, and it's honestly exhausting. I've been trying to get him to do things with only me, But he always says that she's his daughter as much as I am, and that it's not fair. The last straw was last Sunday. My mom and stepdad made a small birthday party for me. I told my dad since August, and I made him promise that it'll just be him attending, that none of his daughters and wife were invited, because it was my party, and I didn't want them there. He fought at first, of course, but said okay, and I honestly believed him. However, around 3 p.m., he shows up with his stepdaughter on his hand, and I lost it. I took him aside and asked why was she here, and he said that she's his daughter, and wherever he goes, she comes with, and I couldn't help but to start to cry. I guess he felt bad and realized what he did, but it was too late. My stepdad came, and after telling him what happened, he asked my dad to leave. He looked at me, I guess waiting for me to tell him no, but I just hugged my stepdad and he left. I'm thinking about stopping the visits and telling the court that I want to be with my mom and my stepdad, because it's obvious that for my actual dad, I'm not the one who comes first. Not the a-hole. Your dad's hugely off base here, especially since he spends a lot of one-on-one time with his stepdaughter. He's just trying to either double up his time spent with his kids or foster some sort of bond between the two of you. You are not a priority in his life, which is heartbreaking, but you don't need to keep giving him opportunities to inflict that pain. If you decide to ask for less time with him, don't feel guilty about it. He's done everything in his power to show you exactly how much he cares. Not the a-hole, and go ahead and tell all of that to the court if that is what you want. You asked something very simple of him, and he refused to respect your wishes. I'm glad your stepdad has your back. You are not the a-hole. Your dad is setting your feelings aside to favor his stepdaughters. It's surprising he can't see that. Maybe he just began to, but you are not an a-hole for wanting to get all his attention from time to time. She gets 100% of it sometimes, when you aren't there, and 50% other times, when you are. You deserve 100% sometimes too.